I'm taking just a brief moment to tell you about Anchor, which is the platform that I am using to record my podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. And who doesn't want free? There are also certain tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your iPhone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So please just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and have fun doing it. Welcome, beauties. This is Christy, and my co-host will not be with me today. I'm going at it alone, and I have a special guest here. If you remember when I did the PTSD, we had spoke with John, and he did say that he would like his ex-wife now, but his wife at the time, to give her side of it. And so I have Jill with us today. I'm super excited to talk to her. And so you guys sit back, get yourself a drink, whether it be tea, coffee, or liquor, whatever it is that you enjoy. And welcome, Jill.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm making it. I'm making it today.
Right. That's the main thing.
That is. Okay. So, if I remember right, John told quite a bit, and he did feel like you would have more memory than he did.
Sure.
And a different memory.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we'd like to talk about today, is what you remember, when it started, how it started.
Okay.
And so if you could just kind of start out and let me know why don't we start with when you met John and how?
Okay. So John and I met through a mutual friend. He had moved into her apartment building, and my friend met him because they lived in the same apartment building. And so I, of course, met him that way because he was always down at her apartment and I was always over at her apartment. So we just met that way. We were friends for, I want to say 2 to 3 years. And then he had decided that he was going to join the military because things were not going well for him. He really had no direction from what I understand. And his sister-in-law at the time had told him, hey, why don't you join the military? It'll give you some structure, and, you won't just feel like you're, just out there, just aimlessly.
In limbo.
Yeah, right. Right. So he decided to join, and at that time we were just friends. And so, of course, we wrote back and forth. And
let me stop you
there. Sure.
So during those 4 years that you guys were friends, what was his personality like?
He was fun to be around, happy-go-lucky most of the time. Everybody's got their moods.
Moments,
sure. But he was, we went out on the town a lot, and which was a complete change from how he is now or was when we were married. Just had a lot of fun together. I could talk to him about anything, and he really didn't judge me, and I didn't judge him about anything, and we were just good friends. I would consider, because we kind of had a little group, and I would consider him one of my best friends back then.
Was he pretty open about his life with you?
He was very open.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll bring that in later. So then go ahead and go to we'll go, what do you say, forward
Okay.
to him going into the military then.
Okay, so he joined the military. We were just kind of writing back and forth. I was in a abusive relationship. I remember he called one time while he was in the military. I told him what had happened. He said, look, you've got to get out of that for me, for your son, get out of there. And so after that, we kind of, hey, they say date your, friends,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll make it. And I was like, So after that, we just kind of decided that we were going to give it a shot. And after he came back home I want to say he came back home in May or June of 2002. We got married in October of 2002. Okay. So we very quickly, once he got home, we had never lived together before. Mm-hmm. So this was a whole new realm for us.
And your relationship was dissolved completely with the other guy?
Oh, yeah.
So he was out of the picture?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's was long gone.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. So we got married in October. I moved down there to Fort Campbell with him around November, December-ish. And then very quickly got pregnant. I can't remember if I was already pregnant or I found out right when I got down there. And then he got deployed again to Afghanistan or Iraq, I can't remember, in January or February of 2003. Mm-hmm. And then during that time, from his deployment to the time we had our daughter, we just wrote back and forth, phone calls when he could. It was during the day for him when it was at night for us. And, sure. So I'd have to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, which was fine. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of letters and things like that. So.
Okay. And he was able to write you back?
He did. He, had his family and friends and everything too that he was writing, so his letters weren't as lengthy as mine. But he did write back here and there. But a lot of his phone calls did go to me, so I, couldn't really complain.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
And then something happened.
Yes.
Are you okay to talk about this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So July 4th, I was getting me and my son ready to go to a family reunion. Well, let me back up. July 4th, that morning, I had woke up on my stomach. And I was pretty pregnant, almost full-term pregnant. And I thought it was weird. Didn't really think too much of it. We were going to a picnic or family reunion. That day I was making this Jell-O dessert that was, red Jell-O with the blueberries and the strawberries and the whipped cream, and it looked like a
patriotic.
Yes. And so I was
supposed to be a good day.
Right. And so I made that, and like I said, I can't make that anymore, and I can't, especially around that time, I can't.
And I think that's perfectly normal. There's a lot of things that happen on a certain day that day we always will remember, and we won't do the things that we were doing that day.
Right.
Even like if you get sick on something, you don't ever want to eat that thing again.
Right. Right.
So normal.
Yep. So I was making that, and me and my son were getting ready to go, and I was like, I haven't felt Jade move, which is her name. I haven't felt Jade move all day. So I called my mom, and I'm like, hey, I haven't felt the baby move. She goes, well, it's hot out. Just, kind of lay around and, lay down, see if you feel her move. Well, I didn't. And at that time, I called the hospital because it was on a weekend, I want to say, or my doctor's office was closed. And they said, if you lay down and you haven't felt, I believe it's 2 kicks in an hour, then you need to come in. Well, I didn't. So I called my mom, and we went up to the hospital. They sent me up to labor and delivery, gave me a sonogram, and I can remember the doctor's face, and he just looked at me and he said, I don't know what else to say, there's no heartbeat. And that's how I found out.
So did they do a sonogram to see what happened?
They did. They did blood work to find out what happened to her. Is that what you mean?
Well, I wondered if they did like not an internal, because the baby would have been in the way, but an outer sonogram to see if there was anything going on first. So they just did blood work?
Well, they looked, and at that time they said it was a cord stricture. So we thought it was because the umbilical cord had twisted so many times it just shut everything off. Well, later...
So she wasn't getting oxygen.
Right.
Okay.
And later on we found out that there was microscopic blood clots in the umbilical cord, and it just shut everything off from her.
And was that happening at a slow time that you guys just didn't know about it, or did it happen that night?
Well, I think it must have happened, just over the course of the pregnancy, maybe, or,
They never really explained it.
Right. With my next pregnancy with Kylie, I had to give myself Lovenox shots in the stomach and everything, and make sure my blood was kept thin, and wasn't able to clot and things like that. So,
and is this something that's hereditary then?
It is. My daughter Kylie has it.
Okay, so she's going to have to go through the same procedure that you do. So, is it just in women?
I don't know if it's just in women. I know that with her and I, my daughter and I, we cannot have any hormonal birth control that contains estrogen, because that increases your risk anyways. So we can't.
It's not good for you anyway.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Cancer, the whole 9 yards. So
right.
At least you're not missing out on
right.
anything.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Is it too hard to go through the time they called John in your waiting period for him to get home?
No.
Okay. So why don't we go through that?
Okay, so I was laying there still on like a stretcher in the same room they told me all this in, and I could hear the nurse telling somebody, you need to put in a call to the Red Cross so we can get him a message overseas so that he can come back. And I did not want to, they gave me the option of if I wanted to be induced that night. And I said, no, I want him to at least be able to see her, because they told me he would more than likely not be able to see her if I delivered, and then it was 3, 4, 5 days before he got home. So,
I want to stop you there. We did talk a little bit about this before we started the podcast, and I was thinking about this because I had a past experience with a friend, and she could not reach her husband to go, and so I took her to the hospital. So I was with her. I continued to try to reach him all day, but they finally said, her blood pressure was going up and stuff herself. So they said, we're going to have you have that baby. And it was also a girl, and she had the cord wrapped around her neck. Okay, so apparently that had happened during the night. They left. I think this was kind of cruel. This is just my opinion, though.
Sure.
Okay, because they said, would you like to wait for your husband to get here to see the baby, or do you want to just hold her for a while and then we'll come take her? And she said, I don't want you to take her. I just want to hold her. And we were there a good 4 hours straight, and they would stop and check and then say, are you ready yet? And she'd say, no, I'm not. And she just sat and rocked and sang to her. Like, she was totally out of it.
Sure.
Okay, well, as that time went on, I'm the one sitting there, okay, and I'm watching the baby's fingers turn black, her mouth turn black. It was not a pretty sight.
Right.
And there was a horrible smell, and I kept thinking to myself, I know she's not thinking, but that's going to be her last memory at some point.
Right.
That's kind of a PTSD thing too. So I'm kind of glad that you were able to wait, even though you were taking a big risk, and I think that's fantastic that you did do that. So how did John react to you waiting?
I don't think that he thought that when we finally were able to talk after he had gotten the message, I don't think that he thought that it was going to be like she was going to be like a full-term baby. I think he thought that I was just had a miscarriage or something, and this, it was, I mean, not to say anything, but I think that he thought that it was just going to be a few minute thing, and
Sure.
And that was it, So he asked me.
And he probably tried not to think too much about it.
Right. Yeah, and he was probably trying to protect himself too, mentally, So
I'm glad you had your mom there.
Yeah. And I had my in-laws too.
Your in-laws, good.
Yeah, I relied on them a great deal. So we had the same thing. He finally got home, and it was a good thing he did, because they told me if he hadn't got home when he did, they were going to have to induce me anyways, because my white blood count was going way high and I needed to deliver. So she was born. At first I did not want to see her because they told me that she had a funny look on her face, and so...
Because she wasn't getting oxygen all that time either, so...
Right. And so Sue, the nurse midwife, she said, I'll put a bonnet on her, because there was no muscle tone, so... and so they...
It's okay. I'll get you some Kleenex and you're fine.
I'm fine. They put the bonnet on her and brought her in, and she was really...
Okay, we had a brief pause there for a little bit of advertisement, and we're going to have her go ahead and start back up if she can remember where she left off.
Yeah. So they brought Jade, our daughter, in with her little bonnet on, and so she's, like I said, very pretty. Her lips were very, very red, and I asked the nurse why.
Like lipstick red?
Mm-hmm. I asked the nurse why, and they said that's where her blood had pooled, was in her lips, which was very, I thought was just, kind of like a sign, from her, just that it was just odd that it had pooled right there. So same thing, they, said we could hold her as long as we wanted to. We had our, family come in, whoever wanted to hold her was able to, whoever didn't, of course, we didn't push them to do so. And then, like John said in his interview, his brother and my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law's wife, Lisa, she had they had done a lot of the work, as well as Tammy, his sister, and his mom had done a lot of the funeral home prep, where she was going to be buried. Tammy had his sister had a lot to do with that. So that took that part off of us.
So during that time, while everybody was doing their parts and helping out you two, were you two comforting each other?
We were. I, at that time, like I said, I hadn't cried about this in probably 10 or 15 years, so I don't know what happened, what happened there. But
I make people cry.
Oh, no. No. So anyways, we did the best we could. We had, it was just graveside services. And then afterwards we went to his sister's house and, kind of received everybody. And then after that, I just kind of tucked my feelings away because he had to go back. And so I was trying to make everything about him so I just kind of tucked everything away and was very numb and very blank to everything.
So one of the things I remember him saying is, because I asked him if he was able to comfort you,
mm-hmm.
and his answer was, I would probably have to ask you, because he felt like he was trying to do that, but he wasn't sure if he really was.
Yes. He did the best he could. I mean, it was such an odd thing to happen. I didn't really know how I was supposed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big emotional person, so I'm just kind of like, I'm fine, and then just, keep
mm-hmm.
moving. So he did the best he could. I remember one time I was like, just promise me that we can try again.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he got emotional and pulled the car over, and, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, we will try again. Don't worry about that." So for him, he did the best he could, and I tried to do the best I could for him
mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
We were younger and
do you feel like you handled things better than he did?
I think in the long run, I think that I suppressed a lot of my issues when I should have probably talked about it more.
Mm-hmm.
Where for years, he got very emotional and really wouldn't. I really didn't still really don't celebrate much on the 4th of July because it's a bad day.
It wasn't a good day for you.
Right. But, now my grandson's birthday is July 5th, so I'm like, maybe this is her saying, don't be sad anymore. That's how I look at it.
And you should. This is just my opinion, but she's an angel, and I believe in God. I don't remember if I said something to John about that or not, but I believe in God and that he has a plan, and that she became an angel, and she had somewhere she had to be.
Right.
And
right.
some place to go.
Right.
And I also believe that she's with you all the time.
Right. And that's how we comforted each other too, is if that hadn't have happened to her, maybe something would have happened to him over there during
mm-hmm.
that time, which I know he said that he would have rather it been
of course.
Him, but that kind of gave me comfort that, it was while he was in war that happened, kind of to bring him home and maybe get him out of harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of...
So he mentioned that the times he got to come home that you started saying that you were noticing some changes in him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think, especially starting with boot camp, from what I've heard from my nephews and stuff, right away they start teaching them to be hard.
Right.
Because they're going to see so much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's what was going on? Like he just had hardened already?
I think that he, he was a little more hard than what he was. He was very angry.
Did he ever say who he was angry at?
I think that he was angry mostly at, the situation that he was deployed from, in a different country, during a wartime, and we, he wasn't able to really do what he had hoped the military would do for him, which is, the structure, and that was kind of all out the window. So what he actually went into the military for, and then he ended up getting deployed during a wartime situation that was completely obviously. I mean, nobody seen 9/11 coming. So I think he was very angry about that.
Okay. And so then he came home again.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Right. He once we had Jade's funeral and everything, like he said, he was home for 14 days, and then we actually went down to Fort Campbell and got his leave extended for another 14 days. And at the end of that period, I mean, and I remember we were in the hotel room the night before he was getting ready to go back overseas. He just had a complete meltdown because he didn't want to go back. And he goes, and I said, well,
Did he not want to go back because he was grieving, or did he not want to go back just because he didn't like it?
Right. I don't want to speak for him on that.
What
sure.
you think.
I think that...
Or could it be both?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And I would have been the same way had I been in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been very scared to go back, to have, almost a month's time to sit and process of what could be and all the what ifs. And mm-hmm. I don't know that I could have even, it's scary.
So you didn't feel bitter about what he had to do?
No, I mean, I knew he was in the military when we got married and mm-hmm. when we were still friends, so I knew what I was signing up for, and that, that was part of it.
Do you feel like he should have had more time,
though? I do, and for him to come over here and kind of decompress for the month and kind of let his guard down and then have to go back, I think that would really mess me up if that's what I had to do, because who would want to come home and then have to go right back to a mm-hmm. wartime, but people do it all the time,
mm-hmm.
but not usually for the reason that he came home.
Right.
So
okay, so he went back and he got himself in the mode that he was supposed to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I remember right, he didn't even think about it anymore and he didn't think about anything anymore. He put himself in the mode where he had to be to protect his men.
Right.
So when he got out, he did tell me he went AWOL once.
He did.
For a couple, but he turned himself in.
He did. He, again, was very angry. We got into quite a few fights. He threw our wedding picture down the stairs at me. It shattered. It was not a good time.
So did you see increasingly more things start going on with him
mm-hmm.
the longer he was there?
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, he got very angry one time and hit me on the top of my head, and I had a goose egg on the top of my head.
Did he hit you with an object or with his...
It was with his hand. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even at that time, he's like, well, you shouldn't have pissed me off. And I'm just like...
That sounds narcissistic.
Yeah, so...
But there's, if anybody wants to go back and listen to my narcissist podcast, you'll see where there's a lot of things involving a narcissist, and they have a disorder name for everything now, everything. And if you read narcissist and you read PTSD, it'll say in PTSD that they can become narcissistic.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think that he was so angry with the person that he had become. He really didn't know how to handle it. So he, it just lashed out in anger and things like that. He, once he was on leave for a weekend and he just decided not to go back because he was so angry with the military and the treatment that he had gotten and the, lack of help that they offered for his situation. He, was just very angry. And so I think I'm not making excuses for him. I know that, he knew what he was doing. He was conscious of what he was doing. But I think that had a lot to do with it. What was, the anger that he had.
Okay, and so going back with John's interview, he said that you finally got upset enough that you gave him an ultimatum.
Right.
So can you tell us about that?
Right, yeah. So I basically told him either you're going to get help or, I can't keep doing this. From the beginning, him and my son did not get along, and that was, my son was 5 when we got married, and so they really didn't mesh well anyways. And when things started really happening when he came back, I was like, I'm not going to put him through this. So you either need to get help or, we're going to have to separate. And,
which I commend you for that.
Oh, thanks.
Because, and I obviously wasn't in your situation, but being in your situation, I might wanted to save everything and then know I'm taking a really big chance of losing that person, because a lot of people would say F you and be out of there. I don't know if that's something that you would have wanted, but I'm just saying that was a possibility.
Sure.
And that would have been kind of scary to me after losing a baby and then trying to comfort him through his whatever he was going through, but you also had your stuff. So that was a lot on all of you.
Sure, yeah.
So I did tell him that, it was good for him too, that, he still made that choice and said, yes, I'll go. Whether at the time it was just for you didn't matter, because he made it work for him. A lot of times, so I don't know if you know, but I am a life coach.
Yeah.
And, that's something that we talk about a lot, is it doesn't matter if you have a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, if you're a narcissist, if, you're depressed, whatever it is, you're not going to get help unless you want to.
Right.
And it's not going to work. We can sit and talk and talk and talk, and if you're not letting it sink in, if you're not wanting it, if you're in denial, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So in talking to him, I think he said he went almost 10 years. And it sounded like he would have continued had he not lost her.
Right.
Which was sad. But 10 years is a long time.
It is. Yeah.
And it sounded like it helped him a lot. Like that he just got lucky that he got the right therapist that he was able to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him telling me, and I think it was in our interview before the podcast, that she was like just strict with him, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of surprised him.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he liked that. She wasn't going to let him get away with anything.
Right.
So he said right then he could have just got up and walked out and said, forget you. But he liked that about her, that she was standing up to him and making him face stuff. So so you were still with him while he was going through counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a slow process?
It was a very slow process. To go back to what you said, that's probably what he needed me to be, was a little more strict and, not be the enabler or the fixer-upper that I am of people. If I probably would have been a little more stern, maybe he wouldn't have done some of the things that he did.
I don't think you can blame yourself, though.
Yeah.
We tend to do that.
Right. Yeah. So he, he would go to his counseling. Like he said, we tried to go to couples counseling here in town, actually. And the counselor was a nervous wreck by the time we had gotten done. So we just quit.
She wasn't, or he,
the
whatever
counselor was a nervous wreck by the time. I mean, we were only in there for like an hour. It was our first or second session.
And you guys made that person a nervous wreck?
Yep.
Was it arguing back and forth already?
Yeah, and all he said, all the counselor said was, he put his hands on the table and he says, get a divorce, be good to each other during the divorce. And I mean, his hands were shaking.
Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it was that bad, or was that the counselor?
I think the counselor was a little not very good at what he was doing, maybe.
Because I've not ever heard something like that. That's I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it was very... I was like, wow.
One of the things I try to tell everybody is, first of all, I think everybody should have a personal life coach to go to at any time. Yeah. I mean, over the simplest little things that other people may think are simple, but somebody that's non-biased, that you can sometimes just talk and you don't need any advice.
Right.
But it's somebody that you can say whatever you want about whoever you want, and it's not going anywhere. And somebody that you can get that anger out. And I mean, that's our job, to listen and let people feel.
Yeah.
And then yes, after that's done, you start sorting it out and give them tools. But definitely let them get it out. Of course, you're not going to let somebody hit each other or anything like that. It didn't come to something like that, right?
No,
you guys were just going back and forth, probably blaming each other and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Normal couple stuff that people argue about.
Right.
Anyway, I'm sorry about that. That didn't work, because that might have saved something. But then I guess there was plans for you otherwise. So, how long did you guys last after he was in therapy?
We got legally divorced back in 2015. So, I mean, we had another daughter,
in between. And she was okay.
She's okay. She was in the NICU for about a month and a half. But other than that, she was, very small. She was a preemie. She only weighed about 4 pounds. So she, but
was she a preemie because of the condition?
She was for the most part, I had a placental abruption. So my her placenta started ripping off of the wall, the uterine wall. So they transferred me from one hospital over to the big hospital, and they had to give me a bunch of medication and steroids to get her lungs going because they were going to have to deliver her. So they wanted to.
So you probably went to the neonatal.
Yep. Right. Yeah, and he was very. I cannot say how much of a good father he was to Kylie. She still is to some aspect, but she was very much a daddy's girl. And I think that's part of the reason why he went AWOL, because he,
was there like an immediate bond there?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. I think he thought that, Jade passed, but here's my chance. And so.
How did you feel about that?
I kind of was resentful that they were so close. Because
she is a new mom.
Right, yeah. And so.
And you're the one that carried the baby.
Right.
Hey, now wait a minute. I just saved your life here. I just carried you and went through all these body images. You're supposed to attach to me.
Right. And that's kind of what I thought. But, I mean, I went back to work and he was, able to stay at home. And so, she went to daycare, but, most of the time if she had even a little sniffle or, I want to stay with Daddy, then, she would just stay home with her dad. And so,
So he didn't ever mentally or physically abuse her?
Not her, no.
No. So he was getting help after she was born already.
Right. He had gotten help for, Jade was 2003, Kylie was 2005.
So a couple years.
Years.
So just a couple years into it. So still nothing like he is today.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The person he is today, I don't know who he is today. I don't. Because great for him. He's a different person. Like I said in the beginning, he's more the person that I knew before we got married today than he was
during the
we
marriage
were together, because he was so angry. And
so I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked him, because you're married to him first and then you're his friend first. Do you feel like his PTSD is a part of a lot of things, or do you think it was majority of military? And this is not trying to blame the military.
Sure.
This is trying to let people understand PTSD isn't just military.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think it could be a lot of other things too, and then the military just kind of brought it out full force, is what I think.
So do you think that the military, because I had you listen to what he said.
Right.
Do you think he was holding back on things that were traumatic, but he didn't see it as traumatic at the time?
Right. Yeah. That's yeah. I definitely
because one of the things that I've studied and seen was a lot of times we go into a mode when something traumatic happens, and you can work your way through it, and people in a normal situation, he had to continue to keep going, but in a normal situation, a couple days after the event happens, your body reacts and your mind reacts. But he didn't have that time.
Right.
So I kind of think that there was more of the military than he's admitting to or recognizes.
Sure.
That I haven't talked to him long enough to
Yeah.
really, he did say he'd go over his background and tell me some other things. But just in listening to what he was saying, I feel like it would be really hard to go into that situation, period. Um, and I know nothing really happened, but it's two things that were big started to happen.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, he wasn't supposed to go yet. And
Right.
his platoon wasn't supposed to go yet. And, just me, I believe in a higher power, but regardless, he was left here for a reason. And then he just kept going and doing what he was supposed to do and didn't even think about what just happened.
Right. Agree there, yeah.
And then never thought about that again.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if he ever brought those things up to you again or if he had nightmares over them. He never mentioned that.
He did.
He did.
A lot of times he would sleep during the day while I was at work, and Kylie was at daycare, because he would be up all night. He had a lot of flashbacks. He had just a lot of things that he couldn't do. Like he couldn't go into crowds. He couldn't, go into loud bars. He couldn't, nothing like that. And like I said in the beginning, when we were just friends, we did a lot of that. So when he couldn't do that anymore, I'm just like, what? It's not like I was looking at him and saying, what's wrong with you? But he had changed, just, went from one person to a completely different person. And the person that I knew him as isn't the person he was and isn't the person he is today. So he, and Kylie will tell me stuff and I'm like, hey, we never were able to do that. He wouldn't, what's wrong with me? Why wouldn't he do that with me? And
but now you know why, because
right.
He had more years that he got tools that, and then a different personality that he's with now that, that's their business, however they handle it, but seems to work.
It does, yeah.
Seems
like a better fit, because there for a while we were just kind of forcing it because of Kylie.
Sure.
And I had lost a lot of myself because I always wanted to put him up in the light and make sure that he was good because, of everything he had been through. What I had went through was nothing compared to what he had probably seen and done and, where he had been.
But losing a child is a very traumatic thing, so don't minimize that with what he was going through. We can't do that. You went through a lot yourself, and then he left, and not because he wanted to, but he still did.
Right.
So I don't know if I wouldn't have still, even though it would have been justified, felt a little bitter.
Right.
A little bitter.
I probably, looking back now, I probably was and just didn't, didn't realize that's what it was. And I want to say too, I'm no peach all the time either. Everybody's right. Yeah, I'm not putting all the blame on him of being the sole reason that we're not together, because that we were just had grown apart. And
and it always takes two. And
right.
We know that, and that's
right.
when we mature enough to be able to say that. So today, do you feel like you guys have a good enough relationship that you're co-parenting well? Yeah,
we, for the most part, I've never been one of those women who have said, well, if you don't do this, you're not getting your kid, or
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that it's not just my child to keep.
Right.
So, it's just as Kylie's just as much his as she is mine. So that's all. That's never been a problem.
That's good.
Yeah. Have we gotten into several fights or arguments or, whatever over, since we got divorced. Yeah, we've,
Have those been over the past, though, or present stuff?
For the most part, they've been present stuff.
And so then, as these years go along, have you seen him get a little softer or change a little bit the way he's speaking to you?
Yeah, I mean, I try and just, every time I see him, I'm like, "Hi, friend," or something, goofy like that, because that's just who I am. I try and stay upbeat, and he just kind of looks at me like he always has. He's just like, looks at me with the.
Now, see, he seems to me like he's trying to be a really positive person, though.
Now, yeah.
Now, that's what I mean. Like, he did talk about the depression and all that, but he really likes trying to be positive, and he has realized that the people that he chooses to be around has a really big effect on him. And so he's trying to keep positive people around him. That doesn't mean that always is going to happen, but at least he understands and knows that, which that's important.
Right.
And the forgiveness part, I'm not quite sure.
Right.
If he's forgiven himself. I didn't get to talk to him about that. He did get emotional. And I let him get emotional and then just go on. So there was tons of things that we could have made into another podcast. But this particular one is on PTSD. So,
right.
But there's women out there that want to know from the other side. They listen to his side and they want to know, so we're going through this. What's your advice? How did you get that courage up to say, choose this or you lose me?
My son.
So out of protection for your son.
My son.
So what if they didn't have another child? What would you say?
I would, you just gotta, nobody's gonna stick up for you more than yourself. Nobody's gonna put you first more than yourself. Don't, brush your feelings off. If you're feeling that way, you need to come out and say it. Anybody, not, trying to just, get on the military, but anybody with PTSD that has a partner or family or whatever, it affects them too. So, like John, he wasn't the same person that I married, so I would just, really dig down deep and say what you need from the person that has the PTSD, because nobody's going to advocate better for you than you. So you've really got to stick up for yourself.
I so much agree with you. So you've learned things down the road too.
I have.
Okay. And so has your life moved on now?
It has. I'm remarried. We've known each other for 26 years. Me and my current husband have known each other for 26 years.
So was he a friend too?
He is a friend, yes. It's a completely different relationship than what me and John had. A lot of laughs. We had the same sense of humor. Not saying that we don't have any issues, because
everybody
does.
Even though they don't admit it.
Right. But it's, for the most part, he's a fun-loving guy. He's got his issues just as I have mine, and, we try and either we're going to work through it or
so you can say you're happy now?
I'm happy. And I'm happy for John that he's finally found, somebody that can make him happy and be the best person he can be.
And I think he's trying to be the best person he can be. And I think he also knows that he still has work to do. And that's it, like a daily process thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I wish that he could find somebody else to continue with, but
Right.
when he said the counselor that came in and took her place was a male, for some reason, the first thing I thought was that probably didn't go well.
Right.
I can't see him listening to a man.
No.
I don't know why, because I don't even know him that well, but I just couldn't see that. And as soon as he said that it was a male, I thought, yeah, I know what I'm going to hear next. But I wish for his sake that he would have went back and said, can I try again with somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I think he could even go more, even though he's... Now, what kind of field were you in? Were you in the medical field?
I'm a nurse. Uh-huh.
And she is too.
His current wife?
Yeah. Isn't she in the medical field?
No.
No?
No.
Where
she works with, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the place that she works
You don't
at.
have to.
Yeah, she's like mail and stuff.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a nurse during this time. Were you at a doctor's office?
I didn't get my nursing license until 2012.
Okay.
So.
Not during the time then.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that going through the nursing has helped you too?
Sure. I mean, it's given me a lot more self-confidence.
And I'm sure he broke that down.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Sorry that happens. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. But a lot of it's my personality too. I'm an enabler. I'm a fixer-upper. I try and fix people and make them feel better, while I'm just like, oh, I'll just sit here and, So that's kind of my own issues.
But do you think that gave you any more knowledge or understanding of maybe things that happened so that you could forgive?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you think you've forgiven?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any ill feelings for him at all. I mean, as long as he's happy and he's, taking good care of our daughter, which he always has, what is
I'm not trying to drag anything bad out.
Sure.
I'm asking that because it's so important that people do forgive before they can go on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't do that.
Right.
Or at least they don't say the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
In talking to him, he doesn't sound like a person that says, I'm sorry very much.
No.
And yet I see a soft side.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's there somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that's in actions or what it is. He seems to care about people in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe he could even be an enabler, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But for him not to have such a hard time saying, I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess he believes that whatever he says, well, he did say that, whatever he says, he wouldn't have said it unless he didn't mean it. And that's just the person that he is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, people either accept that or they don't, and
Uh-huh.
that's their business.
Right.
But forgiving the situation that happened with you guys is important.
Mm-hmm.
And him forgiving himself because he felt like he wasn't there enough.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't sure. He wasn't
Right.
sure how you felt.
Right.
So this may be a little bit more closure for him too, if you feel like he was as much as he could be.
Right.
And then you're saying you don't have any ill feelings. So
Right.
I truly wish that so many people would listen to this and understand that that's so important to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for that other person,
Mm-hmm.
but for you, because you went through those things with him.
Right.
And there was damage done,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, emotionally, physically,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a lot.
Right.
And to forgive is the biggest step.
Right.
So, okay, well, I really, really enjoyed talking to you about this. I so much appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks
know
for the
you had-
opportunity.
Well, you're welcome, and hopefully we can help some women out there to understand what's going on and what they can do. And what would be the biggest thing that you think is most important for them to do to start, like right today?
It would be advocate for yourself.
Okay. I think that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Everybody, please make sure that you, after you listen to this, that you share it out to people that you know would be interested, and maybe those that you're not sure of, because you never know. I've had a lot of feedback from this, a lot of questions asked about it, and it's not a topic that a lot of people are talking about. It's almost like it's hidden.
Right.
And I feel really bad about that, which is why I wanted to do it to begin with. And also I wanted to add again that it's not always military. Not that I'm sticking up for the military one way or the other, because I've seen good and bad.
Sure.
But I think people need to understand that any traumatic event can cause the post-traumatic disorder. So thank you all for listening, and we love you.